Exactly. Yeah. I grew that and let it cross. Bees did all the work. I just saved the seeds. And next year I grew those seeds. And from that, I got so much diversity. I had diversity that I have not even seen in the parent population.
Welcome to episode 19 of the Seed Farmer Podcast. I'm Dan Brisebois, seed grower at Tournesol Cooperative Farm and spreadsheet and crop planning enthusiast, author of the upcoming book, The Seed Farmer, a complete guide to growing, using, and selling your own seeds. With this podcast, I want you to get inspired to go out and grow some seed on your farm. Manish Kushwaha is this episode's guest. Manish is a fourth-generation seed farmer who had no intention of following the family tradition, but after a period working as a software engineer and thinking about what was meaningful to him, Manish decided to start working with seeds and ultimately to start his own seed company, Gaia Organic Seeds, in Ottawa, Ontario. In this episode, Manish talks about getting set up on land in Ottawa's NCC Greenbelt, where it is possible to rent farmland for 25-year periods. This opportunity let him get set up with tile-drained fields and buildings and a place to live. Manish explains how his approach to seed is more spiritual than scientific. He sees himself as a steward. Seeds are our allies, and we walk in this journey together. Manish also uses seed growing isolation distances that are much smaller than usual recommendations. We talk about how Manish has established these distances without compromising his seed varieties. Throughout the interview, we keep coming back to Manish's watermelon breeding project, where he crossed 22 varieties to create a diverse gene pool, and how he has been selecting out specific phenotypes from the mix, including the ever-elusive mango watermelon. This leads into a discussion of how you should always keep some of your stock seed back to compensate for the vagaries of squirrels, plant disease, and rats. In the deep dive, we talk about growing watermelons from seeds, planting, spacing, harvest, and how to extract the seeds with a food processor or a grape crusher. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Before we start the show, let's get a word from the Seed Farmer show sponsors. The goal of the Culinary Breeding Network is to improve communication between plant breeders, seed growers, farmers, chefs, produce buyers, and others to improve quality in vegetables, fruits, and grains. The Culinary Breeding Network creates unique opportunities to taste in-development cultivars where everyone can share opinions and be a participant in variety development. Inviting chefs, farmers, and everyday eaters into the breeding process increases public awareness and understanding of organic plant breeding. To learn more about the Culinary Breeding Network and find out about upcoming events, visit www.culinarybreedingnetwork.com and follow on Instagram. Are you a farmer looking for educational resources in Canada? Check out Young Agrarians. They are a farmer-to-farmer educational resource network for new and young ecological, organic, and regenerative farmers. Young Agrarians offers farmer-to-farmer programming, including tools and training around farming, business, mentorships, land access, and so much more. Interested in learning more? Head to youngagrarians.org and give Young Agrarians a follow on social media. All right, back to the show. Hey, Manish, welcome to the Seed Farmer Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Dan. It's good to be here.
I'm thrilled that you've agreed to be on the podcast. You're not that far from me. You're only a couple hours away in Ottawa. I'm near Montreal. I might know about the climate and stuff, but there's a lot of other things that I might not know. And I'm really excited to have this conversation and to see what I don't know about you as we get into this interview and discover new things about seeds.
Yeah, it's good to be here. And I think it's important what you're doing here. I think telling the seed stories is very important. I think we have forgotten the tradition of seed stories, like telling seed stories and what people do and how they do. And I think like this is great to be. And I listen to your podcast and I'm inspired by other people who come to this podcast. So it's great to be here and talk about seeds.
That's fantastic. I'm glad you listened to it. And why don't we just jump in with your seed story?
Yeah. So seed has been part of my life since I was born. Like my dad is a seed farmer. My grandfather was a seed farmer. Both my mom's side and my dad's side, So it's been interesting. I didn't always wanted to be a seed person, or I didn't know like what that meant, So But I went on my own journey. I was studying computer science. I became a software engineer. I was working in software industry. And during that time, like, I think when I was studying computer science, it hit me that like, oh, like, I'm blessed with to be born in the seed family, and like what I was doing in computer science, it was well, I'm like the person who do everything from scratch. No, if I'm doing computer science, I want to like build my own company, start something from scratch. But it seemed like too big of a goal at that time, and I didn't have any good ideas at that time to like do something like impactful. So I think since that time, I started thinking about. I was in my own journey to like figure out what I want to do, which is more meaningful to me. And so like thinking about like where I come from and going back to the roots, thinking about climate change and what this will cause and what like how we have to be prepared as a civilization. I think that made me think like, okay, like maybe doing seeds was something more meaningful. And so I chose seeds and started having a garden, learning more about seeds, how to grow things, saving seeds, and then from that it came like, oh, I have too many seeds. Maybe I should start selling seeds. And yeah, then I started collaborating with Greta, and she was my mentor, and then again continuing to like make progress and expanding the seed business.
Do you want to tell us a little bit more who Greta is?
Yeah, Gaia is Ottawa-based seed company. Used to be, now they are Montreal-based. She has been my mentor. She had a farm in Ottawa where I'm right now, and it's a 5-acre property which I've expanded into 20 acres. And yeah, she has been my mentor to introduce me to the seed world, seed people in Ontario and across Canada. And yeah, she has been key in helping me set up the farm. And yeah, that's Greta for her. She runs an organic seed company called Greta Organic Gardens.
So the land that you're farming on, that Greta handed over to you, this is NCC land, which National Capital Commission land. It's like a Greenbelt around Ottawa. Can you explain to the listeners a bit about what that means and the leases that you have access to?
I think like this is a great like public and private partnership. I think because this is on Greenbelt, Ottawa's Greenbelt, and I'm by the river. And it's a 5-acre property I have on the lease. NCC has 100 of these properties around Ottawa, mostly farmlands, and not all of their farmland has been in organic production, but they are moving towards that. So they prefer people who do organic production like us. Usually they can sign a 25-year lease with them. It renews every 5 years. So I think I'm on the last bit of renewal because I transferred from Greta's to mine. So I'll have to like renegotiate with them a 25-year lease moving on. And it's a great location for me because it's in the city. It's like everything's close by. So in terms of convenience of like sending mails and having people for plant sale and hosting like workshop, it can generate significant amount of revenue that I wouldn't be able to if I was somewhere else, I think.
It's really an amazing opportunity and support to be a young farmer looking for a place to grow stuff and then have access to this, because there's a home on the place. There's also outbuildings and then there's fields that have been tilled that are like they're already farming fields, and they're not something you have to clear up and break it into.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very great about it. Like it's like tile drain land which I have. And I'm borrowing 20 more acres from my neighbor as well, and that's also tile drained. And yeah, everything is like prepped for. Like I have to like, if I was starting from scratch, it would have been so much harder for me to like start as a seed farmer. So I think like having this is a blessing to be here and having that already set up, and NCC is willing to have people like us who can take care of the land and operate our business from here.
Do you want to describe or tell us more about Gaia Organic Seeds and what your business currently looks like?
So I started in 2019, but I've been gardening a few years before that. Like officially, I started in 2019. When I started, I had like 20 varieties of different things, and now I have over like 1,000 varieties of different things. I used to do garlic at some point, but I stopped doing garlic because it was too much physically. And at that time, when I do garlic, at that time I'm busy doing seed saving for the other stuff, so it was contradicting. As a single person, there's so much to do. So I think I let go of garlic, but I still have garlic varieties that I'm saving and for myself and for the project. As for setup, there's a house at the farm where I live. There's a barn. There's a seed shed where I might do my seed drying. There's one big greenhouse. There's one shade house where I harden my plants, and there's one small greenhouse. And I'm building a newer greenhouse in the back. Hopefully, it will be ready for operation next year. Yeah, I start seedlings in my basement. I have a nice setup in the basement, and I can start up to 13,000 to 20,000 seedlings in the springtime. That's for my seed crops and for plants here. And yeah, I have different isolation fields within my fields. There's tree line which blocks pollinators and stuff. So I can isolate my crop 3 different places on the farm. No, actually 4 different places at the farm, because 2 places are 1,000 feet away, so I can grow some things. And so with this so I've been farming on this 5 acres for last 5 years now, and I've been using it excessively, planting very close together crops. So I got new fields to better manage my soil health, because sometimes it's harder to do cover crop on time, and it has been challenging. So having more space is going to be help me spread out more and better have soil management practices.
Is it a 4th generation?
Yeah.
You're a 4th generation seed farmer. Does that come with pressure?
Maybe, I would say maybe, because my father didn't intend me to take over the seed business. He sells open pollinated seeds in India, and that market is dying in India. Everybody is growing hybrids all over the place. So I think it's a problem, because hybrids are great. I'm not saying hybrids are not great, but I think there needs to be a diversity of seeds in public spaces that people have access to, that they can feel empowered to grow their own food and have quality seeds. So I think as a society, we should think about not letting it die. We should have people who do open pollinated seeds and support them. So in public domain, we have good quality seed access.
Well, I really look forward to the interview we're going to have in 6 or 7 years, when you've been doing this for a few years, and seeing how it goes. I'm really impressed with that scale up.
My vision is to have seeds that are adapted to different zones. I think in my own experience, when I'm doing watermelon projects, I send my watermelon seeds to Evelisa in Thunder Bay, and when she sent me her seeds back from my own batch, I grew her with my own population, and I saw her seeds were more productive than my own seeds, which I had been growing here.
When you said you're sending your seeds to Thunder Bay is colder than where you are. So,
yeah.
So Evelisa would have been selecting in more harsh conditions.
Exactly. Yeah. So zone 5, zone 2. So I assume that that when there's a significant zone difference and it's harsher condition, seeds become more adaptable. And we have been selecting from just early fruiting, and there was no production criteria to select, and still they were producing more fruits, So that made me think there's something to explore here. And I think I want to try learning from that, how can zone readaptation can help us produce better quality seeds.
And that's what I love seeing, is making seed better adapted to the bioregion that it's in. So I like hearing that. And in the second part of this interview, we're going to go more into that watermelon project. So I'm sure we'll touch on that a bit more.
Okay.
Before we started, you mentioned that your approach to seeds is not only driven, it's not scientific in your approach, that you have a more spiritual approach. Do you want to tell us about the spirituality that you have behind seeds?
Yeah, I think I see seeds as an allies. Like I think we have forgotten how traditionally we have known seeds in different culture. And I'm learning from indigenous culture like how they have seen seeds as like beings. And with my watermelon project, like I'm realizing like I'm only a steward in like taking care of these seeds, but it's everything that comes together in terms of like the pollinators, the wind, the soil, the microorganism, everything comes together to like make. And watermelon has this own agency to like grow and adapt to this region. Like we have very little to do with it. And as much as we are just the steward. So I think like from that perspective, like I see like having like seeds having their own agency to grow and produce and adapt to our own region. I think like we always forget that. Like as humans with like and humans in the top of the chain of like food chain. Like we control and like we destroy, we create, and we feel powerful in that experience, but like we forget like no, like but everything is coming together for this experience to like make it happen. So I think like my approach to seeds is like seeds are allies. And like we should protect them from that perspective and give them voice. And so like I think like how we even like make laws like are like completely devoid of its ownership. Like seeds are owned by like corporations. So I think like that needs to like transform slowly. Like only Ecuador is the country in the world where nature has authority, like as I say, power over like humans. So I think like we have to like move towards that model of like, because in Earth we all cohabitate together. And everybody should have a voice in a human system, in an economic system. So yeah, I think like even my inspiration like for seeds like came from like, so like my imagination or like a collective imagination what will happen with climate change like drove me to places where like okay, then we need to be able to like be more resilient in any crisis we have. So I think like that was a motivator. And but the motivator was truly like that, like, oh, we need like these seeds allies who will be with us, who will hopefully like adapt to a changing climate and help us. So I think like walking in this journey together with seeds is what I'm doing. And that's my spirituality to say.
So it's a partnership with the seeds and with the other natural forces.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
And when you're talking about like the watermelons, you're creating an opportunity for the watermelons to adapt to an area, but it's them that are doing the work.
Exactly. Yeah. Because we are able to see what will like be more communal, what will like communally more benefit. If I bring this watermelon, it's going to be communally more benefit because it's more productive. I mean, that's the outlook I'm looking from. So we cannot like save all the watermelons, all kinds. So we cannot save a bitter watermelon, because it won't be viable for us. Maybe like its genes may be viable. Maybe it's worth saving them. But like with our capacity, we can only do so much, right? So yeah. So walking together, what makes sense for all as a community of people and seeds.
So I thought that we were going to so normally in these interviews, I like to do the first part, kind of talk seed story and just, seed discussion. And then the second part kind of talk shop. And I thought that in the second half, we would focus on watermelons and talk, both the growing of and the breeding project. But since the watermelons have come up twice already, why don't you explain this breeding project and tell us, how it began, where it is and where it's going and how you're doing it?
Early in my journey, like I was trying to grow everything all of the time, like just to see what it is. Every variety I can get my hands on, anything. So at that time, like I had access to a lot of watermelon seeds. So I'm like, okay, let me just try growing all these watermelon and see what happens. It wasn't intentional. It was intentional in the sense that like I want to grow and save seeds, but I'm not sure what will come out of it. So I planted all my watermelon seeds. I had some idea, like okay, like. The selection of watermelons I have, I can make any kind of watermelon, which is like I can even make like a seedless watermelon from this batch because I had requested some seeds from Gene Bank, and they were diploid and tetradiploid that would cross and make me a seedless watermelon. And it will also give, and the combination, if they cross, could give me all colors of watermelon, from like white to orange to pink to salmon color. So I was set up properly to like be able to explore what happens, and I grew it all.
It sounds like you grew a bunch of varieties. I don't know how many, dozens or hundreds?
22 varieties. Yeah, 22 varieties of watermelons.
So 22 varieties in one field, side by side, without isolation distance.
Exactly, yeah. I grew that and let it cross. Bees did all the work. I just like saved the seeds. And next year I grew those seeds again in the mix, 100 feet row. And from that, I got so much diversity. I had diversity that I have not even seen in the parent population. So in the first generation, like maybe I had like 50 crates of watermelon, and I tried watermelon every 2 hours. Like I would do a thing. I would take a break, eat watermelon, save the seeds. Oh, and how I would like write things would be like I would make a label and write all the traits. Oh, sweet, yellow flesh, green. Like outside, and then I would write all the traits, and then from that, like I would have like maybe I came up with like 50, 60 varieties from that, which I had like isolated just the seed itself, and then at some point, like I let it crop, I let the seed mix by itself, a batch of it, like the first batch of it, but the second batch, like I had isolated, So
what do you mean by that? You isolated? You grew each group of plants separate from each other?
After the first generation, I selected maybe like 5, 6 from the population that I thought like I should like isolate them.
Yeah.
From that generation, second generation, F2 generation is when I started isolating them. So to take some more out of to take those specific population out of the whole population.
Okay, so you're trying to, at this point, you've chosen some characteristics that you liked, and now you're trying to concentrate them in the different groups that you've isolated one from each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Can I ask how far you isolated them one from each other?
I would say 500 feet, but like I grow very intensively. Like I have like lots of flowers in my fields, and so they were quite isolated. I'll talk about this isolation distance. I sort of like cheat in some cases because I know like pollinators would not go there, and it comes from experience over time that like, okay, like I'm able to do this because I have so much stuff here that bees won't come in. Even bees come, they will distract me with the flowers. And so how I design my crop area is quite intensive, and we can go over that at some point. So 500 feet.
So we'll come back to the isolation. Well, let's get back to the watermelons.
Yeah, so like 500 feet, I find was enough. And next in the FC generation, I did not see any crosses. I was able to like further isolate them to what I was selecting for. Again, watermelon is not finished. So I did watermelon, but then other people were interested in watermelon. So I sent my seeds to Evelisa, to Catherine. Evelisa had some other farmers in her area which grew watermelon. So yeah, it became like a project bigger than what I was doing, And then Evelisa is in zone 2, and she started selecting for watermelons. And selecting watermelon in zone 2 is quite a rare thing. She has very few watermelon types that grew, and it's very spotty, So she wanted to select watermelon.
Do you know what her like first frost dates are, or how short her season is?
I think she said September is when she gets frost. I forget exactly September, end of September or beginning of September. But September she gets frost, and June is when she plants.
Okay, so it's a shorter season than watermelons love.
Exactly, And yeah, I can see in her population she has her size. Her like watermelon is smaller in size as compared to what I grew here first time. So yeah, and. And then my exploration with the watermelons has been like, what happens if I take those seeds back that I have sent and grow it here and remix it with my population here and see how that further adapts to my climate, And from the experience, I realized like, okay, drone readaptation could be a possible, interesting thing to look at. Um, yeah, that's the story of watermelon. And so last year I had a watermelon which was like completely intact in -10 in my greenhouse. So I was quite surprised to see that. So that's another variation I'm selecting for within this population. It could have a good storage quality trait.
So you're saying at -10 Celsius?
Yeah.
The watermelon. So the watermelon was frozen.
Yeah, frozen. Yeah.
And then it thawed out, and it was still good.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It was like intact. I'm like, what is this? I've never seen this before.
That's a whole new direction for watermelons.
Yes.
Are you still keeping a large population that's very diverse, or are you just working with these smaller groups that are more not uniform, but more stable within themselves?
Yeah, I'm keeping one group mixed with everything, and I'm going to keep that as diverse. And in the future, maybe I'll share that with other seed companies if they want to make their own watermelons from this population, I think this is another thing I want to talk about. Like a lot of seed companies, they don't share these like genetics which they like breed, I think like with the watermelon, like the intention of sharing these seeds freely was like to be able to like have this culture of like together like finding out how nature is evolving with us, So I think like we have gone to like only 4 seed companies owning the entire seed market is like a bad thing, So I think like through my efforts, I want to be able to like create this another wave of like, okay, let's share seeds and see like what together we can come up with, and can we adapt watermelons to like our bioregion from the same, from the same population, and see what that gives us,
I'm definitely of the same mindset, and we share a lot of stuff that is still in development. And I think that's a great philosophy. And it's always fun to see what happens on someone else's farm. And in part, it's the bioregion, but it's also in part, it's what they like. Because they might find something exciting that you wouldn't really care about, and they can go some a different direction with it.
Exactly, yeah. And that's the exciting thing about the plant world, like there's so much diversity, to explore and play with, and yeah.
Let's take a quick break and hear from our show sponsors. All right, everyone, important public service announcement. I know some of you are already making plans for how you'll spend the winter, ordering tools, researching seeds, projecting crops. It's also a great time to gather with our farmers to share knowledge and skills. This February, join thousands of farmers like you from across the U.S. for 3 days of community building and farmer-led learning at the 36th Annual Marbleseed Organic Farming Conference in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Find out more and register at marbleseed.org/conference.
Hello, everyone. This is Owen Taylor.
And this is Chris Bolden Newsom of True Love Seeds. We are farmers who run a seed company to preserve our ancestral plant relatives from all over the world and share our seeds with gardeners and farmers seeking out their beloved tastes of home.
We also have a podcast we think you will enjoy. It's called Seeds and Their People. We interview growers about the plants that keep their culture thriving.
Tune in wherever you listen to podcasts and at trueloveseeds.com.
All right, back to the show. I kind of remember you in a presentation talking about a mango-flavored watermelon.
Yes.
Is that still a quest you're on?
Yes, I am still on that quest. So very surprisingly in this story, like when I was saving my watermelon seeds from the F1 generation, I hung all my watermelon seeds in like a sort of like a cloth bag in my greenhouse to like dry. And then I noticed squirrels have taken over my greenhouse. They have come made a hole in the plastic, and they have tried to like get on my seeds, and they took my just mango watermelon seeds. I have like these like maybe like 60 or 70 types of watermelons, and they only went to that specific one for some reason, So mango watermelon was almost lost. I had like 2-3 seeds from that left, So I was hoping like, okay, like I will. Okay, so this mango flavor was. I'm from India. I love mangoes, So I don't get to eat mangoes all the time. So when I was eating this mango watermelon, I didn't know it was mango watermelon, but like the texture was not of. It was in watermelon. It was the smoothest texture that you can find, and the taste was tropical. like almost like mango, That's why it was mango watermelon. That's why I named it as mango watermelon. And in my experience, among the entire F1 population, for me, like that was the best mango. That was the best watermelon, And then, so I saved the seeds. I grew it again. I gave, because I had few seeds. I didn't want to like take risks, so I gave it to like few friends to see like if it will grow, But it did not grow because there were three, four seeds. So I didn't have any luck. So I had to like go back to the entire seed lot of like previous generation, parent population, and I knew the seeds were black, So I had a mix of watermelon seeds of all different colors and size, So I separated them individually, each color, and from the black color, I just started giving them to people to see like, hey, like I have like these like 300 seeds. If I cannot grow all these 300 seeds, and I wouldn't know which one is mango watermelon. So I started giving out seeds to all my friends. I made a Facebook post. A lot of people came out to like help me out to like grow these watermelons, mango watermelon, to see if we can find a mango watermelon. But like within, because they were all black seeds, each one would like possibly create like a red flesh or yellow flesh. But I knew it was a yellow flesh, so I gave out the seeds. Apparently, only Evelisa was able to like. I mean, some people grew the seeds, and same for one other person, same thing happened. The rats got to their seeds, So like it has happened like quite consistently that like all the critters like this seeds more than they are selecting for themselves, these tasty seeds probably. So I didn't have any luck at that year. I had a bad watermelon year, so I was able to get anything from that population. So it was bad luck for me. I didn't get anything out of it. But Evelisa, she was able to like save the mango watermelon. When she tasted the watermelon, it wasn't mango, but when she dried it, it was just like a mango, like dried mango you eat from store, So she sent me those seeds this past year, and I grew it. Unfortunately, where I grew it, I got some kind of watermelon disease. I think it's called like what is it called?
Anthracnose.
Yeah, anthracnose. Yeah, and so I lost my mango watermelon again. I mean, it grew. The watermelon grew. Like three of them grew, and it got disease. I didn't get to like check on time, but the disease had taken over the melon itself. But then all the critters come and ate the rest of it, So within those bowls of leftover things, there were like 2-3 seeds left. So again, I'm starting back again with 2-3 seeds. So next year,
wow,
we will see what happens.
Well, good luck with those seeds. I wish you the best of germination and the best of weather and all those things to grow it out and get to the point where you have a bunch of seeds that you can work with.
Yeah, actually, what Evelisa sent me, seeds, I saved half of those seeds just in case. So I have those half to work with and the new batch. So we'll see. Hopefully everything goes well this next year.
And that highlights the importance of keeping seed back from your projects so that you can offset the unfortunate years and the squirrels and the critters and the rats.
Yep, exactly.
Let's go back to isolation distances. When somebody opens up a seed growing book, a seed saving book, sometimes the isolation distance, so the distance that two crops of the same species have to be separated by to keep them from crossing, some of those numbers can be huge. It can be kilometers and miles. But it sounds like the numbers that you're using are smaller than that, and maybe even smaller than I'm using. And I'm somebody who likes to ignore a bit isolation distance rules. So why don't you tell us a bit more about your approach and what you've seen over the years?
Yeah, I think like since growing from the beginning, like I'll give you a story of the beans. So like first year I grew seeds when I was starting seeds in the seed world. I grew beans, and I just like bought some beans from bulk barn, and I just like planted them to see what happens, And within that population, I got a new bean that I didn't plant, I got like this like nice like looks like purple cosmos looking beans, So I was very interested with that. I was like, oh, interesting. That was the beginning of like understanding like what this means. Beans are self-crosser, so I wouldn't expect like, even though if they are planting beans for like bulk barn, I wouldn't think like they would cross that easily. Like beans don't cross very easily, as we know from the signs, And so I was surprised to see these beans. So that set me on a journey to explore like why should we like that made me go on a journey like to like test with isolation distance. Is this what it says on the book truly is what it means, So I started planting like tomatoes together, for like commercial tomato, it's like 80 feet or something, isolation distance. I started planting them like 40 feet and 20 feet and see what happens, So I noticed like I planted like 80 different kinds of tomatoes, and I planted them like 20 feet away. At some point I was doing that, and I realized I get few crosses. I get maybe like 2-3 crosses among that 80 varieties of different things when I grow them next year again, So I was like, okay, interesting. So then I started to change that. I started doing 40 feet. I'm even getting maybe one cross. And maybe that was a mistake from like transplanting and labeling it wrong, So like,
You put the wrong plant in the wrong area. It's not the seed that was crossed up. It was just an accident in the greenhouse.
Yeah. So like, I'm like, interesting. And I've been growing on 40 feet for the last many years, and I have not seen any new crosses, So I was like, okay, maybe like I can, maybe also like, mind you, like that, like I grow very intensively, and I have like other pollinator things in between my tomatoes that pollinators would get to, like I plant a lot of flowers in between, a lot of squashes in between, depending on what it is, cucumbers, melons. So I think like how my setup is, what has worked for me, I can get away. Not like in squashes, I cannot get away with crossing, but in some things I can get away with like less isolation distance than what's recommended.
Well, you mentioned already that you're growing. I don't know, not in any single given year, I'm guessing, but you have over 1,000 varieties. So you're growing hundreds of varieties in a given year, and you have a patchwork of crops in your fields, and so there's a lot of barriers that are breaking up the pollination and also distracting the pollinators to more exciting things than tomatoes.
Exactly, yeah. And like I think like one time like I just sat down in my field and like just like look and observe, and I would notice like a bee would come to a tomato patch. It can only like go to so many tomatoes flowers, right? And it will just fly away to go back to its home, So like, so I was like, interesting, like, so that gave me inspiration, like, okay, like, so bees can only take so much pollen from an area, and if you have very intensive like growing, then they will only be like, so like they will only be like isolated in like pockets, So like you can get away with a lot, but like still within reason, you have to like keep growing to see what's happening,
So I find it exciting, but it also scares me having this on the podcast to, because what we're not saying, or what you're not saying, is that isolation doesn't matter. But one of the things that I love that you said is you grew it what you thought might be too close, and then you grew it out the next year to see what happened.
Yeah.
And in one case, there was a bit more crossing, so you grew a bit further the following year.
Yeah.
And that's the way that you found out what distances worked for you.
Exactly.
And it sounds like you all are aware there may be occasional crosses here or there that are happening, which are opportunities for new projects, but they're not so big that they're going to be a problem. And so anybody listening to this, it's not just ignore all distances.
No. Yes, very important. Thank you for saying that, because I'm not breaking all the rules.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're breaking rules that are just written down, and you're seeing what the actual rules are for your farm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Is this a good point for us to switch to talk a bit more shop now, get more technical?
Sure. Yeah.
So why don't you walk us through what growing watermelons to get seed from is like?
I start like about for one group, it's a bigger group. It's a mix of everything, and I start like 100 feet row. I plant them quite intensively. Maybe I'll give them like 1.5 feet distance between them, and they will like spread out, across. And from that, I try to like maximize my harvest like time, like in a sense, like I'll save time and harvest all at once.
When you say 1.5 feet, is that inside within the row or is that between rows?
That's within the rows, within a row. Actually, my rows are like I just plant in one row, so I have one row.
Oh, so you just have one row. So it does not in between rows. So you have one row, and in that row, they're 1.5 feet spacing. How much space do you have between that row and the next crop that you have?
Maybe it's like 5 feet, probably like
each way?
Yeah, each way. Yeah. So
okay, and then they sprawl out.
Yeah.
Before we get into harvest, do you direct seed them in the field or do you transplant?
I transplant everything. I don't have any good success. I have like clay soil, so I don't have good success like direct seeding at all. So everything is a transplant for me. Yeah.
Okay, so you were getting to the harvest period of the process.
Yeah. So over the years, I've realized like if I plant watermelon in the same spot, I get diseases every year. So I've learned over the years like it's not a good idea. So harvest time, I try to like harvest all at once because just for ease of convenience, I could like go in the fields and harvest in time. This is what I did last year, a change in my strategy. And I found because I planted things late last year, so like they weren't all mature all at the same time because of the cold as well. And it took until October last year to like harvest all my watermelons, and then this year, I'm adapting the same strategy. I'm trying to harvest all at the same time. So next week, I'm going to harvest my watermelons, all of them. And I'm seeing some diseases in my watermelon this year. This is something new, Last year, I didn't have almost no diseases, So it's interesting to like note how my watermelons are adapting to our climate,
What visual indicator are you going by to know that a watermelon is ready for harvest? And how does it differ if you were just doing it for eating?
When the watermelon is ready to harvest, there's a tendril, when there's a stem and there's a tendril that comes off it. If that tendril is dry, then it's ready to harvest. And for seeds and for fruit, it's the same thing. I do let my watermelon stay like harvested after and let it like sit until I get a chance to like process it. And that will allow the seeds to become more mature if they haven't yet, I do this for all my crops. Like let's say for cucumbers, you leave the cucumbers for longer for seeds to mature. Same thing with any other crop. Like I let them go for longer a little bit to let it mature within the fruit itself, even after the harvest,
You're talking, and it sounds like you're talking more fruiting crops like squash, melons, tomatoes, peppers. Like those are the crops you're talking about that you'll harvest them when they're ripe. Or in the case of like zucchini or cucumber, they're going to be like bigger than the normal eating phase. And once they're really ripe, you harvest them and then you keep them aside and then they keep after ripening.
So in terms of processing seeds, like once after I harvest, I cut it, I taste it because it's still a project I'm like working on to like perfect. So I taste all my watermelons if I can. So at some point at the end of the season, I'm like, okay, I have too many watermelons. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to process them seeds and put them in a mixed batch. But so how I process them, I cut into half, I taste it. If it's good, I like it. I put them into its own category. If it's whatever category I'm putting them into. And basically, I have one mixed batch of category where I put all my watermelons if it's good. And then I'm selecting for like maybe 5 or 6 kinds within that population. So I have like an Arctic sweet one, which is like white, very sweet. It can last minus 10 degrees Celsius. And then I have one mango watermelon. It's going. I have one salmon color watermelon. I don't see that a lot in the market. So I'm like, okay, I'll use a salmon color watermelon. And then I have this golden sweet, actually, it's golden midget. The parent was. It's a yellow watermelon. It's this, and the flesh. It's very sweet. I'm selecting for that. So And then, once I try them, watermelon, then I scoop out with a spoon all the flesh, put them into in my mixer, like a food processor, and then I lightly run it.
Do you do anything to the blade, or is the blade like a normal blade in there?
It's a normal blade, but I put a lot of water into it, so it's not as strong. It doesn't kill the seeds, It's like it's like, and it's like a very old food processor, so it doesn't have a lot of speed. So on a very low setting, it just to take out the seeds from the flesh, And then I have different screens, so watermelon seeds will go down and the flesh will stay up, and then I'll add water to it, take out the flesh. Heavy seeds will be at the bottom, and then I'll have the seeds at the end. I'll let them dry in the screens, or I hang them in a cloth.
This is like that part that goes to the food processor. You're putting a lot of melons through that, a couple at a time.
Yeah,
and so that's something. Is that one of the bottlenecks in your period, in your job?
Yes, I do. I mean, I'll see because I do have a grape crusher which I can use for watermelon processing, but the watermelon has to gone quite bad for me able to use that machine. But at some point, depends where I am in my process. If I have more time, I'll do by hand one by one. If I don't have time, and at the end I'll let the watermelon rot more and use the grape crusher to make my process a little bit faster,
Okay, so you put it through the food processor, and you take that out, and then the heavier seeds on the bottom, and then the other stuff's on top.
Yeah, so I'll add that to a bucket, the mix from the mixer. I'll add to the bucket, and I'll fill up water with it in it, and I'll let it let the flesh and everything pour out, and then the heavy seeds at the bottom, and I'll let them to dry.
And what does your drying setup look like?
I have screens mostly. They're maybe 2 feet by 2 feet, and they have a mesh screen, and I stack them on top of each other and put a fan on top, in my seed shed, and it dries in 2 days.
Do you let them sit there for a while longer before you're going to pack them up, or are they ready to be packed up after that 2 days?
Sometimes it depends, how. Because I only have so many screens. Maybe I have 100, 200 screens, and so I can only process so much at a time. So I'll see okay, if next batch of seeds is coming and I need these screens, I'll see how dry they are. If they're not dry enough, I'll leave them for longer. If they seem dry enough, I'll put them in a plastic Ziploc bag with some clay patches in it.
Like a desiccant?
Yeah, desiccant, exactly. Yeah.
I guess that's kind of brings us to the end of the watermelon story.
Yes, that's the watermelon story.
What advice would you give to your younger seed growing self that I guess you wish you knew back then?
I wouldn't advise anybody to start without a plan. Always work with a plan. Have a plan. If you work without a plan, you'd be exhausted and burned out. Because as new gardeners, we all take on so much. We're so excited about everything. Oh wow! Oh, this is exciting. Oh wow! The whole gardening craze takes you over. So I think I'll advise everybody to I mean, it's very hard in the very beginning because you don't know what will make money or what is the best model of operating. So it's a lot of trial and error that happens in the beginning. I think with good research, with good advice from good people, you can make a decent plan that you can be happy with to work with, and just stick to the plan, and of course there'll be variation to accommodate, but have that plan and stick with it so you don't burn yourself out, That's my advice to my younger self,
That is good advice, and I'm a big fan of making a plan, so I like that advice. What would you tell market growers, whether they're growing vegetables, flowers, herbs? What would you tell them to encourage them to grow a bit of or harvest a bit of their own seed from their crops on their farm?
Yeah, I visit a lot of farms locally, and I see a lot of CSA farmers. They have so many stuff going to seed, and they have left to one field. They don't have time to take care of it. They're managing other thing. I'm oh, there's a lot of lettuce seeds here. You could harvest that. but like, I think there's always an opportunity in a market garden farmer to like save seeds. I think, depending on like what they are growing. I think if they right off the bat, if they plan things right, I think they do have like opportunity to like save seeds from many of their crops, depending on how far apart they are planting their seeds. I think like, yes, I would encourage market farmers to accommodate. I mean, maybe like you would offer a workshop like what crosses or not crosses easily, in different families, no. But like I think there is an opportunity there to like save seeds from like many crops. I think like if they're only growing one kind of mustard, they can save one kind of mustard. If they can plant one tomato seeds 80 feet apart from one of the other crops, if they have space for it, then they have tomato seeds, which is like quite pure, And even if one of their peppers, if they have peppers in one of their hoop houses, and if they can put screens to like not have no insect population going in, then they have good pepper seeds for next year, And pepper seeds like they last like 4 years, So it's like what an opportunity to save money in their seed costs, But I understand like for many market gardeners, they might not want. They're quite busy in the summer, so I can understand like sometimes it can seeds can get away from them, and from their budget, maybe seeds are a cheaper option to like invest into instead of like saving them. But I think like knowing that like seeds growing in their own farm is more adaptable and it will keep getting better and better every year. I think that's what the cost of investment in the seeds they should save,
And I like what you say that you visit farms and you say you already have seed ready for harvest right there. You just got to do the work to do that part. It's already happening.
Yeah, and I think like the training might be missing, or they don't have like inspiration because they are busy with other things, So it's like I can understand that piece as well, So it's like I encourage all farmers to like.
It kind of brings me back to what you were saying when you were talking about sort of the spirituality of the seeds, that it's the plants doing the work, and we just got to take those opportunities. So the plants are ready to do the seed, and we just got to meet them where they are.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. You hit the point. Yeah.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
I think I've covered everything, but I'll just say like I have not mentioned like I grow a lot of Asian vegetables, like bitter melon, like bottle gourd, and different kind of rare cucumbers and stuff, and okras, So I also specialize because those are my like heritage food. So I brought those seeds with me and I've been adapting them to our climate. So yeah, I think it's fun for me to like bring my own culture and share that with people here. And I think like I encourage everybody to like grow food from their countries and like bring here, because Canada is like a melting pot of like so much like diverse food, and there's opportunity like to grow so many of those other crops that we have not heard of, So yeah, I think that's exciting. So
when you've brought varieties that are used to a different climate here, what is your success rate with those varieties?
Very low, I would say. Like I'll give you an example of like bitter melon. The first time I grew my bitter melon, I grew like maybe like a 50-foot row. They were nice, healthy plants, but the fruit I got would be like 3 fruits out of the population. That was 5 years ago, but like now I've grown that many years, so I've adapted them and I'm receiving things for them. Now I get a decent amount, So it's like, and here in Ottawa, like there's like, I go to Facebook marketplace and I try to like see what people are offering, and some people are offering some cool things like water spinach. I've never grown water spinach before, So it's like, and they have adapted things for their garden for like last 10 years. I'm amazed by like how gardeners are doing gardeners are saving seeds for their own gardens. And in most cases, I find their seeds to be like more like healthier than the seeds I buy from like some US companies, that are not as good as them,
So that they're part of that bioregional adaptation.
Exactly, and we don't think about them, and they don't think about sharing those seeds with seed companies, there's no culture of that. So yeah, so it's interesting to also tap into those gardeners, and save seeds and tell those stories to other people.
Yeah, I love this as a point to end the conversation on. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, my website is Gaia Organic.ca, and you can reach me through that. My email is manish@GaiaOrganics.ca. And if you have any questions, Instagram, I'm also there. Manish@biodiversity. Manish.@biodiversity is my handle. And we are also on Facebook as well as Gaia Organic Seeds.
I'll put those links in the notes also so that folks can find them that way too. Thank you so much, Manish, for this conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you, Dan. Thank you for inviting. Thank you for telling the stories that we need to hear.
And that's episode 19 of the Seed Farmer Podcast. I'm going to slip in here to tell you a bit about what's going on at the farm. After such a wet August, September has been dry and hot. A lot of days around 27 to 30 Celsius. I guess around 80 to 86 Fahrenheit. Really nice weather to work in. We've brought in all our beans and soybeans, and I'm just about finished threshing them. We don't have much left in the seed fields, mostly okra and some biennials we're going to transplant so we can get seed from them next year. It's really nice to be ahead of the curve this year. On the book front, the Seed Farmer book has just gone to press. It was a bit hectic with a week of back and forth with New Society publishers trying to catch mistakes before the words leave the digital realm and become paper. The Seed Farmer book is getting ever closer to being in your hands. A huge thanks to Manish for being on the podcast. In the show notes, you can find links to find out more about Gaia Organic Seeds. I'm excited to grow some of his watermelon mix and see what happens on our farm. A huge thanks to Sophie Dalton for the theme music. You can hear more of their music at sophiesedalton.com. Thank you so much for joining me in these conversations with seed farmers. You can find more seed growing resources on my blog at seedgrowers.farm. While you're there, you can subscribe to my newsletter full of seed growing, crop planning, and farm spreadsheets. You can also pre-order a copy of my upcoming book, The Seed Farmer, a complete guide to growing, using, and selling your own seed. The Seed Farmer podcast is produced in part by No-Till Growers with the help of our sponsors. A huge thanks to everyone at No-Till Growers for making this podcast happen. If you haven't already subscribed to this podcast, now's the time. You wouldn't want to miss the next episode. Until then, happy farming.